All right. So welcome back. I know it's been a while. This is Shower Thoughts with an Asexual. This is actually episode 6, and we're going back to Texas with my friend Olivia. Olivia, introduce yourself again.
Hi, my name is Olivia Juliana. I'm a TikToker, but more importantly, I'm an activist and a content coordinator for Gen Z for Change. And I live deep in the heart of Texas. I'm in the midst of all of these things going on here. So it's been quite a few couple months here.
Deep in the heart of Texas. So just to give our listeners a roadmap for what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about abortion, COVID, and voting rights in Texas. Specifically, those are really hot button issues around the country, obviously, but we're going to be focusing on Texas because much like Florida, those are 3 big talking points that everyone wants to know about. So just starting with abortion and the abortion bill, what is the specific name of it again?
It's Senate Bill 8.
Mm-hmm. The heartbeat bill?
Like the heartbeat bill, which the name in itself is it's not right. It's medically it's not right. Because at that 6 weeks point, what's happening is it's not a heartbeat. It's the tissue and the cells that will eventually become a heart vibrating against each other. And so it's not actually a heartbeat. So the name in itself is just very much pushing an agenda, going in a direction that's more of religious belief systems than actual medical and scientific fact, which that's not uncommon here in Texas.
Or the Republican Party in general. But the first question I had, when it comes to the general provisions, I think that we all know like the 6-week provision and the fact that all abortions would be banned. And there's, I think, a $10,000 reward for random citizens to basically bounty hunt Uber drivers, parenting or Planned Parenthood facilities, and the woman herself for getting the abortion. What are some of the lesser known provisions in Senate Bill 8 that we don't know about, that we might not know about on a national stage?
I'm not so sure about the lesser known connotations. I know that the real specific one that is unlike any other anti-abortion bill that's been brought up is this bounty. And the problem with it is it's not just the state suing the woman. This bill essentially deputizes private citizens. So normal people are now being given the power to sue women or anyone who's kind of helped a woman have an abortion. And so that's opened up a lot of doors on a lot of very bad possibilities of things that could happen here in Texas. Like, first of all, that is going to open a very, very bad door about rape victims and rapists being able to take advantage of that system and sue the women that they have already victimized here in the state. It also has no exception from when it comes to rape victims and the rights of rape victims, and where it kind of opens up the possibility that rapists now have an incentive to bring more trauma onto the women who they've already traumatized. And Texas is notoriously awful at dealing with and prosecuting rapists. We have a huge backlog of untested rape kits, and like I think it's something Abbott did with like taking away rights from rape victims. That was a big deal that people don't really talk about very much. I'm not really super well informed on it. I'm still researching, but Abbott is like this bill, not the rape aspect of it, which I feel like I'm saying that word too much, but it's important for the connotation of people to understand, is that he said in an interview when people asked about why there was no provision for rape or incest, he said Texas is going to work tirelessly
to get rid of all rape.
To get rid of all rape and prosecute rapists, which I was like, if we could have done that, why were we not doing it before? Why are we doing it now? Like, what was the magic button? You getting national attention to talk about this, where you suddenly decided you wanted to do your job and get rid of rapists? And not only that, by the point where you're arresting them and prosecuting them, the rape has already happened. It's already happened. Like,
Exactly. When he
it's
said that, I kind of thought to myself, I don't know if you ever watched Futurama, but it's like there's this episode where there's like this crime robot who senses crimes in the future. I'm like, do they have like a Mr. Pickle situation or something? And it's like that just it the talking points don't make sense to people who have brains, you know. That's how I really think about it. And just going more so off of Abbott and like his general policy and affecting a woman's choice and whatnot, how has this affected the general populace when it comes to the implementation of this law? Because I do know that most Planned Parenthood case or Planned Parenthood facilities, excuse me, have refused and completely canceled cases since this has gone into effect, simply under the threat of prosecution. Like, how has this affected people in Texas as a whole?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of reports of abortion providers here having to turn away just
Mhm.
such a large number of people going in for abortions. I also saw, this bill went into effect on September 1st, and the day before, I saw a lot of reports of these clinics just being full of people going there to get abortions before this law went into place. So it definitely has repercussions in the way that people are already having to go to other states to have abortions. They're
Yeah, we
already
heard about that a lot. How people were going to Oklahoma and Arizona, I think, to get just abortions out of the state. Like, is that a feasible option for everyone, or is that like people who have the means to just travel outside of the megalithic state that is Texas?
it is a feasible means for the people who are rich and white and the politicians who have the money to send their daughters and their mistresses there when they have an oopsie.
Mm.
Because the reality is that bills like SB8 and stuff like that, they're not affecting the people who are writing them. They're primarily affecting lower income communities and communities of color. That's what's going on. And that's why bills like this are the worst, is because they're affecting the people who are already disenfranchised in this country. And so, but luckily, there's a judge here in Texas. Her name is, it's Gara Gamble. I think it's Maya Gara Gamble, I believe is her name.
Mm.
She put an order in place that you could not currently sue an abortion provider or healthcare workers with this clause in SB8 about suing people who have helped people have an abortion. So I believe that it still stands that you can still sue a woman or a person who's had an abortion, but you can't
Mm.
sue a healthcare provider or healthcare worker. That's in place at least for right now.
Yeah, and okay, so just going off of like judges and like the federal court system, I guess. Is she a federal court judge or is she a state judge?
I think she's a state judge. I think she ran, was elected.
Okay, well, just going off of like the judge system, how do you feel specifically about the Supreme Court quite literally kicking this back to the states and just saying, you know, let's see how this plays out? You don't really have the standing for it, even though they're effectively deputizing private citizens to do the state something that the state should be enforced in.
Yeah, I think that this is a much larger conversation than people are realizing it is when it
Mhm.
comes to things like the Supreme Court, because they have now set a precedent. We already know it's a conservative supermajority in the Supreme Court. The precedent they've now set is if a case comes up and it is an issue that is strong to conservatives, they're either going to do one of two things. They're going to rule in the favor of the conservatives, or they're going to kind of turn it away and be like, oh, we'll let the states decide, full well knowing that they have now essentially overturned Roe v. Wade,
Mm-hmm.
is what they've essentially done. Because most women don't know they're pregnant by the 6 weeks mark. And now they've kind of ignored what's going on here in Texas. It's created this domino effect of all these other states that are now saying, oh, well, Texas did that. The Supreme Court didn't intervene. Well, we're going to do that now too. So it's going to happen in Florida. It's going to happen
Definitely.
in, which I don't remember if it's North Dakota.
Missouri, I know, has a case that's coming up against the Supreme Court soon that specifically deals with abortion. I don't know.
15 weeks, yeah.
50, yeah. It's the 15-week bill. I don't know specifically what it's called, but I do remember hearing about that just like when I was doing a little bit of research on the topic itself. Just speaking more so about lawsuits, what what lawsuits have been brought just on the state side outside of like obviously what is it called, the Justice Department suing the state of Texas for quite literally going against constitutional mandate?
I think that the ACLU has also gotten involved in
Mhm.
suing Texas because of the constitutionality of it. I'm not sure about individual lawsuits. I know that there's talks of there's some kind of, I believe it's a Supreme Court case from like the 1800s that kind of set this precedent about not being able to deputize average citizens when it comes to enforcing a law. And so I think that people have started to look in the route of that and
Mhm.
uh, going that way. But I've also heard now of the Satanic Temple getting involved and saying that one of their rights as being part of the Satanic Temple is full bodily autonomy. And so this abortion law supposedly violates their religious freedom. So I
Oh
think that
my God, they're really doing that?
it's in their, it's like in their code that they have when you join the Satanic Temple is full bodily autonomy. And so I think it's very interesting. There's a lot of different avenues that are being explored. You have people who are going back to old Supreme Court cases. You have people going based off constitutionality. And now you have people going based off of, the Satanic Temple. I didn't have this on my 2021 bingo card, but the Satanic Temple beefing with the state of Texas sure is interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I remember I was watching MSNBC a few days ago and they were talking about how a bar's liquor license case,
Yeah,
I think,
that's
yeah,
exactly what I'm talking about.
that's the one that you're talking. Okay, how a bar's liquor license case, literally, they took it to the Supreme Court because a church, as a private entity, couldn't enforce whether or not a business could have a liquor license in the state. I think it was Massachusetts, and they're going to be playing on this particular precedence that's been around for 100 years at least, to say that a state can't deputize people. Just yeah, that's something that I have been thinking about. I'm glad we're thinking on the same topic. But my last question when it comes to abortion specifically, and this is more like an open-ended question, so you can like speculate on what you think this is going to do. But what do you think is next for, I guess, the Republican Party when it comes to their tyrannical, and I'm going to use buzzwords here, tyrannical raid against women's rights and womanly autonomy? Excuse me.
There are a few reasons that we have this abortion thing going on here in Texas and different rights going on here in Texas, but focusing mainly on abortion and voting rights. There's two reasons why the Republican Party here is doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to abortion, a couple of the reasons are a lot of people are single issue voters. And if you make abortion illegal or you put restrictions on it at the promise of maintaining the pro life ideology and bringing in more Christian morals and pandering to this kind of white evangelical extremism that we're seeing an increase in, you're
Yeah.
gonna you're gonna keep getting those voters, and you're gonna keep getting them no matter what your other policy stances are, because that's the one that's most important to them. The second one is abortion primarily affects, we talked about this, lower income communities and communities of color. So the more kind of leftist take on this is the reason why they don't want abortions to continue happening is because they're not going to have a working class to continue to maintain. And if abortions keep happening, it's going to keep dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. And so when you take control away from these people to have abortions,
Mm-hmm.
you're increasing the population of people who are in difficult financial situations so you can continue to exploit them. And then the other issue is a lot of abortions are done by white women. And I don't know if you're aware, the census came out last year
Yeah.
that Texas is now primarily a state populated by people of color. White people are now the minority in the state.
Oh shit, they're scared. Oh, the great replacement theory. Is this where, like, this is where the leftists are going with this? Are they saying that the great replacement theory is the reason that they're trying to ban abortions?
there's different beliefs, and I don't think it's one single thing that's the reason why they're trying to get rid of abortions, but I do believe that that does play into the fact that white people here in Texas are becoming the minority, and not only that, but Texas is now primarily populated by Black and Hispanic and Latino people. So
Yeah.
these groups that this party is continuously disenfranchising are the ones who are now the majority of the population. So definitely it's some kind of their
Combination, yeah.
concern. It's a combination of different things. So that's what has to do with abortion rights. As far as voting rights, which I know we're going to talk about soon, these bills are made to keep poor people and minorities from voting,
Well, I
which
mean, we
tells
can
that,
just go right into that now, then, I guess, because like we
yeah,
spent enough time talking about that. I feel like that's a natural segue into the population. Continue.
yeah. So they're made to keep, Black and brown people from voting. And now that Black and brown people are a majority of the population in this state, I think they want to disenfranchise as many of these voters as they can, because if they do, they know that they're going to stay in power. It's essentially them scrambling
Mm-hmm.
to keep their power because they know that sooner or later they're going to lose it. So that's
Definitely. Now, my questions when it came to voting rights specifically, what have the Texas Democrats, was it in the House or was it in the Senate? What have they been doing specifically? Because I know they've been fleeing. Are they back? Are they back in Texas now?
yes, and I have feelings about this. So
Damn it.
what happened was SB 1 and SB 8 were
Mm-hmm.
the bills that this was done. SB 1 is a voter suppression bill. SB 8 is the abortion bill. And so we knew that these bills, wait, no, this wasn't about these bills. This was about, oh no, it wasn't about these bills, I believe. I think it was about a different voter suppression bill. It was still a voter suppression bill though.
Yeah.
So in the House, they were like, okay, you know what? One of the ways we can combat this is we can go to DC where we're out of jurisdiction of Greg Abbott and he can't have us arrested, and we can refuse to let quorum be reached. And so quorum is when you have to have a minimum number of representatives there in order to vote on a bill. So they left Texas. They're like, we're not going to reach quorum until the federal government passes the For the People Act, because that would take away Texas's ability to pass this voter suppression bill.
Mm-hmm.
So they went to DC, they met with the vice president, they met with some members of Congress to talk about the For the People Act. And they're like, we're going to stay here until this bill is passed. Well, they
What
were there.
happened?
They were there for a little over a month, and some people decided that it was within their best interest, or they thought it was best for the people to come back to Texas. And them coming back to Texas meant quorum had now been reached and the bill passed. And so the voter suppression bill passed, and we still have no federal voting right protection through the For the People Act.
Now, when it comes to the Texas voter suppression bill, could you tell me like the specifics? Because I don't know the specifics. I only know what I saw on like mainstream media and like social media and whatnot. So I don't know everything within.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different ones that are like the biggest proponents. I have the list here because I was actually on a panel with some representatives from different states, and one of the representatives who was in DC who came back was supposed to be on that panel with me, and they ended up not being on the panel with me.
Interesting.
So we have a couple here. So one of the first ones is Senate Bill 1111. That makes it to where like you can't register to vote at an address that you don't permanently reside at. So like college students can't register to vote with their college address. They have to register with their parents' address or something like that.
Okay.
And it also targets like homeless people, because they don't have an address to register with, they can't vote. And so another one is House Bill 3920. That's one of the ones that a lot of people are talking about because it attacks mail-in ballots. And it also kind of brings up the conversation of, what qualifies as a disability. And the idea of that is, well, if you can physically walk into the voting booth and vote, then you should just be able to do that. Which
Kind of a stretch. Yeah.
disabilities are not, it's not just a cut and dry thing. Like there's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of different things to it. So it's ableist is what it is.
Definitely.
The one that I think people are talking about is the one that primarily ends early voting, mail-in ballots. And the reason why they're attacking those two things is because of Harris County and the 2020 election. So what happened in Harris County in 2020 is because obviously COVID was going on. They had a couple of different practices they implemented to keep people safe and make voting more available. Mm-hmm. So one of them was drive-through voting, which is where you could go and in a drive-through, get your ballot, fill it out, turn it in, or turn in your ballot already filled out. The second was 24-hour voting, early voting. So you can go in at any hour. You know, if you have to go to work at 5 a.m., you can go vote at 4. You have a kind of an endless opportunity to go vote, and it's convenient for a lot of working class people who are kind of working during those primarily voting hours. And so the reason why they're targeting those mail-in ballots is because Harris County had such a high voter turnout with all of these practices. Harris County is one of the most democratic counties in the state of Texas.
Isn't like 4 million people, correct?
Yeah, that's where Houston is. And it's also primarily Black and brown people.
Of course.
So when you have a high voter turnout in a democratic county with a lot of minorities voting Democrat, they're going to do whatever they can to get rid of these bills that are making voter turnout go up in these areas, which is not surprising.
Now, okay, just talking about like democratic areas and the government and whatnot, I wanted to focus more specifically on gerrymandering. How has gerrymandering been affecting Texas more recently, not like historically, because we know Texas is like the voter suppression state, especially with the census data coming out that it's a majority minority run state.
Yeah. So I actually haven't seen the new map yet. But what I'm suspecting they're going to do is they're going to start trying to break up some of these democratic strongholds, because the state legislature is in charge of redistricting, and the state legislature here is Republican. Yeah, so I think they're starting to see is because here's the thing, even with all of these voter suppression laws in place, every election, Texas is going more and more blue, even with all of these in place. So between the gerrymandering, the voter suppression laws, all these things going on, they are scared and they are frantic.
Yeah. If you lose Texas, Republicans lose everything.
Exactly, because if you lose Texas, not only do you lose Texas, but Florida is a swing state. And I don't foresee Governor DeSantis being reelected in 2022.
Oh my God, don't get me started on fucking DeSantis. He thinks he's such a big dog, and it's like, buddy, chill out. Just worry about your. No, I live in Michigan. Thank fuck. But like, I just watched DeSantis, right? I just watch what DeSantis does and what he says, and it's like you're proof that you can go to an Ivy League. You can get an Ivy League education and still be a fucking idiot. And people in mainstream media is like, oh, he's not dumb, but he's just saying these crazy things. It's like, that's called stupidity. That's called blatant stupidity.
You said the same thing for Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz has literally argued cases before the Supreme Court, and he's still the way he is.
Oh my God. It's like...
Sorry. No, but there's just much bigger implications in these like governor elections that are coming up. People realize, which is why I started focusing on Texas, is because people think it's just, oh, you know, she lives there and there's a lot going on. That's why she did it. I'm gonna tell you right now. Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, "If something happens in politics, it did not happen on accident. It was planned." I purposefully started making Texas content because in 2022. If we get a Democrat legislator or a Democrat governor and we shift some of the power dynamics there in the legislature, we're now setting it up to where in 2024, those voter suppression laws are not going to be in place. And so if that happens,
If we don't get the For the People Act first, yeah.
if we don't get the For the People Act first, but if that happens, then there's a very good chance that Texas will turn blue in the next election.
Honestly, yeah. When it comes to the midterm elections in 2022, I do think that Texas is going to be going bluer and bluer, just between the electric grid, COVID is like really the biggest thing that's going to be pushing everyone towards the Democratic side. Because when it comes to the messaging war, Republicans are trying to talk out of both sides of their neck. They're like, oh, we support the vaccine, but we just don't support vaccine mandates. And every time I talk to a Republican, they're like, oh, you can't take away my personal freedoms. It's like, okay, well, what about polio, dude? What about the mumps?
Or they'll say my body, my choice. And they're like, doesn't that apply to abortion? I'm like, well, you're taking away our abortion rights and pregnancy is not contagious.
Just you, and I feel like when it just federally speaking and nationally speaking, just getting off of Texas for a little bit, I really do believe that Democrats, more specifically progressives, need to start playing more hardball. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to cities like Buffalo and the entire Democratic, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get rid of the mayoral position and install like a city council that'll represent the representatives just because a socialist, openly socialist Democrat won the primary. It's like, bro, the establishment is crumbling, in my opinion. In the next 10 years, when younger people come into voting awareness, not even age, because like we do have the numbers, but like when we come into voting awareness, when these policies start to affect us more prevalently and we have like more autonomy financially speaking to do so, we're going to start voting more progressive. I just really feel like progressives need to start playing more hardball like they are with the infrastructure bill. That's what do you think about that in general?
I'm pretty like pro do what you need to do to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my criticisms of the Democrats who came back to Texas is I was like, I would have stayed in DC for a year if I had to. Because when it's down to it, when it's in the nitty-gritty, you do what you need to do. And so I'm kind of sick of this whole, oh, well, you gotta play nice or bipartisan politics. That's some bullshit. Okay. These Republicans are out here, not only are they spreading misinformation, but now what they've done is they are actively planting all of these seeds of distrust in our electoral system so they continue to throw fits. That's why we now have a right-wing extremism problem in this country. And we have things like January 6th, which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but there's literally going to be a march in Washington
the 18th.
On the 18th. That's called Justice for January 6th. Who the hell approved that permit? It was like, you know what, this is a good idea.
I just, white people, and like let me call me biased or whatever, but white people can literally do the craziest shit and still be looked at as human. Because you got to really think to yourself, if anyone other than a bunch of angry cishet white men were to storm the Capitol or to come to the Capitol slightly angry, what would have happened? Like, would January 6th really have happened if it was nothing but like, if it wasn't white men?
I mean, just look at how they acted when there was like Black Lives Matter marches in Washington.
I mean, militant, angry police officers. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really annoying and it's really difficult, especially like I am Mexican American but I'm white. Like I say that I'm white. Like I understand, and I think a lot of white people don't understand. They get really offended when you say things like when you criticize white people or when you criticize Christians. And especially when it comes to the Christianity aspect, I had to learn this my way, which is, you've reached the true spot where you're truly trying to be an ally and you're truly educated when someone says, I hate white people. And your response is, you know what? That's fair. I understand. Instead of getting angry, because I know a lot of white liberals who, if someone says, I hate white people, they get mad. And I'm like, why are you mad? Why wouldn't they? Look at everything that's happened. This is all white people. Like, it's just annoying. Like, especially living in Texas, because not only are you dealing with like a very strong sense of like neoliberalism, but it's either neoliberalism or conservatives. There's not much of an in between there. So I'm just kind of always sitting here like, wish I lived in California. You know, like.
Speaking of California, don't mean to like just
Today's the
hijack
day.
it. You look, what do you think about Larry Elder? Like the message, not the politics, not the bullshit about them quite literally trying to steal the election of what's the governor's name over there? Newsom. Yeah, of Newsom with only 20. They've said this several times. Oh, I only need 20% of the vote. I'm like, that's not really much of a Democratic win there, bud. Like, are you trying to steal democracy? Or like, what do you think about his fucking what is it called? His website where he already has the vote was rigged, the vote was stolen before the vote has even occurred. What do you think?
I think he is just a real piece of work, and I knock on wood, I really hope for the sake of everyone that Gavin Newsom does not get recalled, because Larry Elder is probably one of the most deranged, unhinged, and idiotic people I've ever seen in a space of socioeconomic issues. And the way he's talked about, you know, women, the way he's talked about slavery. Did you see that with him and Candace Owens, where he was like, slave owners were owed reparations, like white people? I was like, I can't. This can't be real. I was like, there's no way. This is. I feel like honestly, in that moment, I don't know if you watched it. I watched it, but I looked at Candace Owens' face and I was like, I feel like she doesn't agree with this. I was like, I feel like looking at her, and like if you really look at her, she doesn't look like she agrees with what she's saying. She looks like she's being like, I did not realize he was going to take it this far.
I just like when you see, and just giving you a little background, like when Black people see a mouthpiece like Candace Owens or Larry Elder, I really just kind of like tune the fuck out. And I couldn't watch that interview for more than 5 seconds because just like you said, he's deranged. And I really feel like he believes this shit. And it's like, it's a difference between being a mouthpiece and really just drinking all of the Kool-Aid.
Yes, there is a difference. And you know, a lot of people, a lot of like liberals have kind of done that with Trump, where they're like, he's stupid, you know, he doesn't know what he's doing. I was like, even if he didn't, the people around him,
they know exactly what they're doing. Because you notice Mitch McConnell has been fucking silent because he sees the writing on the wall. He's like, let me shut the fuck up and get my state in line.
Because he knows, Joe, I'm telling you, this I can feel it in the air. Something is brewing. I don't like the way that things are going. I don't like the way that Congress is working. I don't like the way that we have seen such a stark increase in right-wing extremism and such a blatant, just empowering movement for white supremacy. I do not like it. I don't feel comfortable one bit. And I am not going to be surprised if in the next couple of years something comes out of that, because the government is not doing what they need to do to combat.
They really aren't. And I want to know, just like a offhand question, have you been getting like random calls from the Fraternal Order of Police?
No.
Okay.
Have you?
Yes, I have. So look, I live in Michigan, but my number is originally from Washington State. So those two don't correlate at all.
Oh yeah, my sister lives there. She gets weird calls.
Yeah, and like, okay, I've been getting random robocalls like, oh, hi, this is the Fraternal Order of Police. And like, once you cut them off once, they hang up. And I got a real person one time. I'm like, why in the fuck do you guys keep calling me about the fucking Fraternal Order of Police? I don't even know what that is, just because like it doesn't happen enough to the point that like I remember it. It just happened a few days ago while I was at work. I'm like, what is this, bro? Like, do you know what the Fraternal Order of Police is? I can do some research on that. We can talk about that at a later date. I've just been getting random robocalls. And I just wanted to know if I was the only one.
You the only one out of the two of us. I have no idea what you're talking
God
about.
damn it. Fuck. Okay.
You know what that is? That's Larry Elder. He's coming for you.
I swear to God, he's trying to get anyone who he assumes is not into politics to just kind of support the police or something. I don't fucking know. But let's talk about like the last subject, just so we can like stick within the hour, basically. COVID. Just the general questions for Texas, because like I know it's bad over there. I understand there's a mandate, but what are the vaccine numbers for COVID in Texas amongst like eligible people, obviously?
I know that they're getting better. Like I don't think it's 50%. I'm not sure the percentage. I know that it is getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere near where it should be. And a lot of people are kind of buying into this, I don't need the vaccine, or the vaccine skepticism, or ivermectin, or Regeneron, and all these things. And it's just really
Ivermectin.
Okay, there's actually like a really bad. Okay, this is bad faith for me. Is that ivermectin is just everywhere. People are just like, oh, it's horse paste. Well, when people are talking about that, ivermectin is a real drug that is prescribed to humans as an antiparasitic. There is a version of it that is for humans. So that is true. And there are people who are taking that for COVID. But the ivermectin that these people are just buying from these feed stores everywhere, that's not for humans.
It's horse grade. Yeah.
Yeah. This is ultimately a fault of not only the Republican Party, promoting distrust in vaccines, but Greg Abbott is very deeply involved in the way that COVID has been handled in the state. So what he did is, I have a video about this, but it's kind of this like trickle down effect of executive orders he put in place. So the first one is when all this stuff happened, state of emergency, mask mandate in place. You gotta wear a mask if you go in public. So I believe it was in like May, beginning of May, or end of March. He put an executive order out, and he was like, okay, we're taking mask mandates away, and after like June 8th, schools can't put mask mandates in place, and private businesses can't put mask mandates in place. So
how's that working out?
I'll get there. So that happens. And obviously, like vaccine rates aren't what they should be. Now the mask mandate's gone, so cases start to rise. So what he does from there is he's like, immigrants are the reason why COVID is doing so bad in the state.
Oh my God.
So then what he does is he issues, this is a real executive order. He issues an executive order, and he's telling these DPS and like state troopers, if you see somebody you suspect of being a migrant, you have the right to pull them over. That's literally racial profiling. That is literally racial profiling.
I think I heard about that for like literally one news cycle, and it was never talked about again.
Yeah. So the ACLU sued Abbott. So he does that. And then, so now COVID's so bad, you're blaming immigrants. It just keeps getting worse and worse. And then he's like, oh, by the way, your schools can't mandate masks. And the vaccine mandate, yeah, we're not going to do that either. You can't mandate a vaccine. So he's just created this cycle of making things worse and worse, and then he just blames it on everyone else. And he keeps tweeting things like, oh, Texas cases are going down. Vaccination rates are going up. Cases are going down because people are dying. And vaccination rates are going up because out of the total population, when people die, that population gets smaller.
It's so fucked up to laugh at. God damn it.
He's like, oh, things are getting better. These numbers are getting better because people are dying. That's why they're getting better.
Oh.
And so people don't take that into perspective when talking about vaccination rates or, positivity rates or things like that. And in Texas, it is so bad. I didn't even go to university. I do online class because I was like, I am not going to a COVID pit in the midst of all this. I'm vaccinated. I had COVID in December, but ever since I had COVID, my immune system is not what it used to be. I have severe asthma and respiratory problems now because of it.
Oof. I don't mean to like
So
just kind of oof that off, but goddamn, yeah, I remember when you
yeah.
had COVID. I think we were actually on the last. You said December? No, well, we talked in February, so yeah, we were somewhere in there between that. But
Yeah.
what
So
have the schools been doing, like the school systems? Because I know in Florida they've been outright defying DeSantis and saying,
yeah,
"No, we're
that
just going
happened
to do
here.
it."
That
They're
happened here.
good.
School systems outright defied it. You have like temporary restraining orders being put in place against Abbott so these schools can mandate masks. Some schools found loopholes where they just made it part of their dress code, just different things. But there are schools now that are mandating masks. I don't know. I'm not, okay, to be completely honest, the last like week, I have just turned my phone off because I have been getting so much more attention than I anticipated, and I'm a full-time student and I have a full-time job.
Mhm.
So I was just like, I need a break because this is just between COVID and abortion and voting rights and backlash I'm getting online. I was just like, I need
Talk
to.
about that for a minute because I actually did see that on Twitter for a hot second. Who blocked you and who retweeted you or something?
Okay, so this is insane to me. Okay, so there's this is a cycle of events. This is a trickle down of events. I have to. Okay,
Just
so
go through the whole timeline,
it's
please.
insane. So there's this guy named Samuel Williams, and
Mhm.
he's running for office here in Texas in this district. He's not going to win,
Good.
but he put out a tweet talking about, I think, ERCOT, and like, Texas is in charge of this. Oh no, I remember what it is. I tweeted the day that SBA went into effect. I wish Greg Abbott spent as much time regulating the energy grid as he does regulating my uterus. And this guy running for office, who's verified on Twitter, this guy has been on Fox News before, quote tweeted me and was like, this uninformed liberal, by the way, he said uniformed instead of uninformed.
Oh my
Uninformed
god.
liberal thinks that Greg Abbott's responsible for ERCOT, blah, blah, blah. So then I quote tweeted him back and I was like, I find it funny you want to run for a Texas ledge position, but you don't know enough about the energy crisis here in Texas to know that ERCOT is regulated by the Public Utility Commission, which 3 commissioners are appointed by Governor Abbott. Worry about your research, not about my uterus. And apparently that got quite a bit of traction.
Oh my
And
god.
it got picked up by Newsweek and the Daily Dot. Like I did a little question with them. But from there, that was kind of the first thing that got me picked up a little bit of attention. And so I'm on Twitter and I tweeted one of those things that's like, I'm a young activist in Texas, follow and retweet to help me. I tweeted that, and in a matter of a day, I gained 25,000 followers on Twitter.
Wow.
Yeah. And so out of those followers was like Brooklyn Dad, Don Winslow, Beto O'Rourke. Like I gained a lot of followers on Twitter. And so then somebody tagged me in a tweet and I went to click on it and I couldn't see it. It was like Jack Posliak blocked you. And I was like, who is Jack Posliak? Because I've never heard of this man before. But he has 1 point something million followers on Twitter. And I was like, who is this person?
Did you ever see the tweet?
Huh?
Did you ever see the tweet?
He never tweeted at me. He just blocked me.
Oh my god.
So I was like, who is this person? So I looked it up. He's like a news anchor for OAN and is like huge in the alt-right community. He's the guy, allegedly, that started the Pizzagate and the Seth Rich conspiracy theories.
Oh my.
So like on terms of right-wing misinformation, he's like right up there with Tucker Carlson. I've never interacted with him before. I had no idea who he was, and he blocked me. So I tweeted out and I was like, are you just scared of a 18-year-old Mexican girl in Texas? Good. You should be. Keep it that way.
I mean, if you got the conspiracy, you good?
Yeah, I'm just congested, bro.
Got you. I mean, if you got the conspiracy theorists running from you, I feel like that's a win for the left. I had
like, man, I'm waiting for Charlie Kirk to block me. I'm sitting here like,
oh my god. But
I love
okay.
being blocked.
So the last question that I did have, just more specifically about COVID, was what is the status of like the hospital systems? Because I know in like Louisiana, or not specifically Louisiana, but like middle America and a lot of like the red states, you have a lot of motherfuckers saying, okay, well now we have to start rationing who we care for. But what's the status in Texas before we have like more of a conversation on that?
Yeah, that's been going on. It's like now ICU beds, like there are hardly any. And we've had to outsource nurses, traveling nurses to come into Texas because we don't have the staff to support the amount of people getting sick. And now it's coming to the point kind of where they're having to decide who gets medical care because the system here is so overloaded with just COVID patients. And it's a really really tricky situation to be in if you're a hospital or a healthcare worker, because if I was a nurse, I'm not, but if I was a nurse who I've been working this pandemic, I'm fully vaccinated, I have children, I wouldn't want to turn away cancer patients or other sick people because I'm taking care of people who refuse to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know where it was. I don't think it was here in Texas, but I know that this man's wife, who is a cancer patient, was turned away because the hospital didn't have capacity for something because it was so overwhelmed by COVID patients.
There have literally been so many stories. I know a guy had a heart attack who died 2 states away. That was just like the most recent one that I've heard. And I know this might be a little harsh or a little extreme, but I feel like if you don't have like a legitimate medical reason for getting COVID and you end up in the hospital with COVID, you should be turned away and say, okay, well, good luck. You had a chance.
It's more like you don't trust the science and the medicine to get the vaccine, but you trust the science and the medicine to save your life when you feel the consequences of not getting the vaccine.
Exactly. And it's like, I know insurance companies are pondering the idea of adding on premiums for people who refuse to get the vaccine. And like, I'm of two minds of that, because you have a lot of poor people who either can't make it to vaccine centers and can deal with the effects of like the vaccine. Because I remember the vaccine was just like, it for me, it threw me on my ass for like a good solid week. And like, I know a lot of people can't do that because they have like, they live check to check, they have mouths to feed and family to support. But at the same time, get the vaccine, you know? Like, it's, I understand. I really feel like that the medical system in general just needs to be revamped and revitalized so people don't have to make the choice between getting the vaccine or going to work, you know?
Yeah, I know Biden just put those vaccine mandates in place, which I think that's fantastic. I think that's a great decision. I've seen a lot of conservatives saying it's a violation of freedom. I don't think so, because you have two options.
Cry about it.
You have two options: get vaccinated or get tested. Get tested, and I think that's not. And their complaint is, well, you can't find COVID tests everywhere. It's because you won't get vaccinated. You want the problem to go away? Get vaccinated. I'm not saying, and this is where a lot of people falter on the talking points, is they're like, people are like, well, then everyone should have to get the vaccine no matter what. I don't think you should have the right to choose. I think it should be mandated. You're free. You have the bodily autonomy to decide whether or not you want to get the vaccine, or even though it affects other people, you have a choice to do that. You're not free of the consequences of what's going to happen if you don't get the vaccine. The consequences are, if you get COVID, you're probably going to have a more severe case. The consequences are, you're at a higher risk of contracting the virus. You're probably not going to be able to go in public spaces and do the things that you want because you're not vaccinated. Your kids may not be able to go to school if you don't want to get them vaccinated. That's just how it works. If you have a problem with that, homeschool your kids, quit your job, live off the grid. Those are the consequences of not getting it.
What are the
And
Republicans saying? If you don't like it, you can leave.
if you don't like it, you can leave. That's kind of how it works. And I noticed it's like, I feel like this is just an America thing. America and Canada. I've seen some stuff in Canada of them like protesting the virus or the vaccine, and I'm like,
I feel
why?
like it's just more publicized because like it's America, but I've definitely seen Canada, I've definitely seen Brazil. They have like similar issues where they have a giant, well, not a giant, but like they have a population that's loud enough and screaming loud enough saying, oh, the vaccine, and you have people in power like, yeah, the vaccine isn't real. You shouldn't trust the vaccine. And like that's a larger geopolitical issue that we don't have to get into right now. But
I would much rather deal with the potential long symptoms of a vaccine than the long symptoms of COVID. I
yeah,
had COVID. I know what it feels like. I know what the long term symptoms feel like, and it sucks. And I wish more people would realize. I wish they would listen to the people in hospital beds who have not been vaccinated, who are saying, "I should have been vaccinated. Take the shot," and then they die. I don't know what else it's going to take for people. I honestly, I don't know. I just,
a lot of people that I've been talking to who are like, they're not, I'm not going to call them trolls, but like they're kind of like jaded individuals. They're like, yeah, we wanted to cull the population. This might be the way to do it. And I'm like,
I don't see a way of us like actually getting out of this if we can't fix the vaccination rate problem.
outside of that's why I am, me personally, I am in support of like a full on mandate because at this point, like after, and I understand that like, yeah, the vaccine hasn't been out for more than a year. So like there are still long-term potential effects of the vaccine itself versus the virus that we just don't know about. But when you're in a pandemic or in a situation where already in America alone, 600,000 people have died, you don't live in a perfectly free world. You live in a societally free world. And when your actions, like you said, when your actions affect other people, those freedoms can be and should be limited. It's just like seatbelts. It's just like drinking laws. It's just like, yeah, excuse me, just like
Gun
drug
control
laws.
laws.
Oh, they hate, Texas hates gun control.
Oh, trust me, I know. But I explained this in one of my videos where I said there's a difference between a civil right and a civil liberty. A civil right is laws that have been passed in order to grant you equal opportunity to things. So it's like anti-discrimination laws, like, you can't turn someone away because of their race or their sexual orientation. Those are civil rights.
Mhm.
Your civil liberties are the things that are explicitly outlined in the Constitution. In neither of those cases are you really like, you can't get someone else sick. Like, I mean, you can argue, right to privacy, all these things. Yeah, you have a right to privacy. You have the right to not get vaccinated, which is why I don't think they'll ever do a full out mandate, is because it could potentially violate some rights to privacy in different amendments. But it can be restricted. You can restrict it. That's constitutional. Just like you can put restrictions on abortion, you can put restrictions on gun laws. It's constitutional to restrict your rights. It's not constitutional to fully take them away.
Yeah, well,
I believe everyone should be vaccinated. I'm just saying from a legality standpoint,
yeah.
that's never going to happen because of the potential for a Supreme Court case or another lower level case about violations of right to privacy.
I can understand that. But at the end of the day, when it comes to schools, when it comes to businesses, I do think that restrictions and mandates, me personally, mandates should be applied. And the fact I just find I find it hilarious that Republicans are consistently going against businesses like, oh, this business can't not force me in. It's like, wait, pause. Don't you care about like private businesses? What happened to that? Like, what?
And it's all about right to choose until it's a right to choose to have an abortion or, vote.
Something that they don't like, basically. But all right, those are the three things that I wanted to talk about. I think that we had a good hour and change of conversation. there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Anything else on your mind?
I don't think so. I have another meeting right after this. So
Got you. So plug yourself where we can find you.
you can find me on all socials at Olivia Juliana. The Olivia, the O is not an O, is a zero. A lot of people make that mistake. But yeah, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You can find me there.
And just a final thing, what else do you have going on in your life like that you want to highlight right now? Because I remember you said you were part of a few organizations. What is it? Gen Z for Change, Texas
Yes,
Democrats, stuff
I
like
am.
that.
I am the non-serial content coordinator for Gen Z for Change. So if you're seeing some videos on Gen Z for Change that are not constantly recurring, there's a good chance that I played a role in producing and scripting and stuff like that. I am going to start working with some other organizations coming up with Texas things. October 2nd, Women's March. It's a nationwide movement. There's going to be one here in Austin. I'm definitely going to be there. So I hope that if you see this and you want to go to a women's march, then you will sign up to go to one in your area. You can find one at womensmarch.com.
All right. So this has been Shower Thoughts with an Asexual. And have a nice day, guys.